My name is Doug Day, for those of you that I don't know. I am the president of the Board of Trustees for the Washington Park Foundation. We are the organization responsible for the development of this site and the ongoing programming and maintenance of this facility. It's a pleasure and an honor to represent our current board of directors and all of those who have been involved in the process before my arrival in 2014. Thank you for being here today. As I've thought about a dedication ceremony, I've struggled to know exactly what that means. Does it mean that we have a formal ribbon cutting? We're not going to have that, so I hope that doesn't disappoint. Does it mean that we have a litany of formal statements? We'll have a few, but not too many. Does it mean that we have a large balloon drop to celebrate our accomplishments? No, that's not our style. Today, what's important to me at our dedication is it's an opportunity to say thank you to everybody that has been with us for the last 3 years. It's important to me today to also say thank you to Judy's family. They're with us today as well, and it's a great honor to have them here joining us today. This project started, as I mentioned, in 2013. It started with a group of local business leaders, civic leaders, people who cared about Washington, who were tired of looking at this abandoned gas station. It was filled with gravel, the building was not looking so good, it wasn't selling in the open market, and a group of people came together with a vision. They came together with a dream. It was bold, it had skeptics, but they stayed the course. The original leaders of this dream are here, in many cases, with us today, and they deserve recognition. In no particular order, they are Barbara Bouillet, Peter Talbot, Michael Ackerman, John Millington, and Denise Trevinan. Like with any good dream, though, of course it must ultimately match up with financial backing. And our community here in Washington never disappoints when it comes to generosity, and this time was no exception. The first leadership gift to step up for the purchase of this project came from Gus and Rita Hauser, who are with us today. They were at the original table, having the conversation, conceiving of the dream. They were quickly followed by a large donation, a leadership donation from the Gould Foundation, with the support of Edwin and Patsy Matthews. These two leadership gifts made that group of original thinkers believe it was possible to turn a dream into a reality. These original two gifts gave another 40 of our friends in this community the confidence to open their checkbooks and also give towards the purchase of this site, which finally took place at some point in 2013. I thank all of Washington for coming together to help purchase this site. Many of you may remember the winter of 2014 and 15. It was cold, it was windy, I think there were 35 inches of snow. It was a good time to stay inside and think about the project. It was a good time to fine-tune our plan, to get ready for our next capital campaign. It was also a good time to listen to Michael. I don't know if Michael is here today, but if he is here today and I see him, he's not going to be happy that I'm calling him out, is my guess. But I had multiple board members remind me this week as I thought about these remarks. Board members reminded me that Michael worked with us for a year, helped us organize ourselves, helped us think about a capital campaign, reminded us that if we were going to go ask for more money, we needed to have a tight message. We needed to have a good organization. Michael has since become a friend of mine, but I know that I can speak for the entire board by saying thank you, Michael Eames, for your support back in 2014. At the same time that we were working on our plan and fine-tuning it, Mark Minnan was trudging through the snow over in Bethlehem. Mark is a local artist, and he's responsible for this beautiful 45-foot sculpture, Currents, that stands behind me. Mark worked that winter tirelessly through the snow. He carved this by hand, and I won't even begin to understand how that happens. Again, like any dream though, it requires financial support. And once again, members of our community stepped forward, and we thank Mark Booth and Lauren Booth, Tim Ingracia and Stephanie Ingracia, and Ben Nickel and Chrissy Armstrong for helping commission this wonderful sculpture that is such an important part of our landscape. The installation of this, you may recall, began in April of 2015. It was a turning point for us. It was symbolically important. It was a moment when people started to drive by and see that we were making progress. Something was happening at the park. They didn't know what. It created conversation, curiosity, created a lot of opinions too. But people put their hands up and said, hey, can we get involved? And the timing couldn't have been better, because in May of 15, we launched a $675,000 capital campaign for the refurbishment of the building and the creation of the park. We were showing progress, and we were so gratified that immediately almost 100 local families and businesses stepped forward towards our campaign. We quickly raised a couple $100,000. We felt like we were making progress. I assure you it wasn't that easy. I assure you I spent many a night wondering, will we get this done? When will we get this done? How will we get this done? And then, out of the blue, and it was truly out of the blue, I received an email from Carrie Setlow. I barely knew her, but I had an email on July 6th of 2015, and it read, Doug, via this email, I am introducing you to Judy Black. She might have an interest in getting involved in the park at One Green Hill, as it was called at that point in time. I didn't know Judy. As I said, I barely knew Carrie. But there was something about the email, something about the words she used, something about the subsequent email that I got from Judy Black herself that made me say, I need to take this seriously. I need to respond thoughtfully. And by July 20th, we had arranged a meeting. I brought Denise Trevinan with me that day, and we met Judy for the first time in that office right over there. Judy showed up punctually at 1 o'clock. She was punctual, which was an immediate sign that we would be good together. And we had a great conversation. Judy had done her homework. She knew what our plans were. She had looked at our marketing materials. She had studied our website. She had questions. She had suggestions. She had observations. She'd been to our farmers market. It was a really wonderful conversation. I was confident we could work with her, and I knew Denise was sharing that same sentiment. At the end of the meeting, about 45 minutes later, Judy threw what I would call a curveball. We'd walked around at that point. She had said, Doug, I could be interested in a substantial involvement. My passion is a flower and shrub garden open to the public. I might even be interested in naming some part of the project differently. These were all strong signals. And then at the end of the meeting, she looks at us as we're walking around, and she points to that corner there. There was a white shed that was about to fall over. And she said, if I get involved, maybe you would let me plant a garden, a small garden, in that corner. I was floored. I thought we were having a far bigger conversation than what she had just expressed. I smiled. I didn't make eye contact with Denise. And I said to Judy, Judy, if you're talking about a gift the size of what you've indicated in this conversation, you should give serious thought to more than just that corner. And I don't think I have to finish the story as you look around today. She gave a lot of thought to this project. She immediately went out and hired a gentleman named Richard Rosiello from Meadowbrook Gardens. She had the vision, the passion, the details to create these gardens. These were her design, but she brought Richard in to help fine-tune it, to help make it a reality, and she couldn't have found a better partner than Richard Rosiello. There was nobody more loyal on this project to Judy's vision than Richard, and it set the tone. It set the tone that other people on this job site followed. Justin Moore, who's not here today, he did all of the hardscape, all of the walls. And I can't tell you how many times he stood in this yard and would say to me, Doug, we gotta fix that, and we gotta fix this, and we gotta do that better, because that's what Judy would have wanted, and that's what Judy would have deserved. Sean Woodward did the work on our building. He didn't get to meet Judy, unfortunately, but through the stories that he heard from me and from Justin and from Richard Rosiello, he came to have a huge appreciation for what Judy was giving to our community. He shared that vision with all that worked here. Sean gave us a reduced rate that was real money to our project. Sean convinced other tradespeople to give us reduced rates for this project, and it made a difference. We had a $400,000 budget for this building. And you know what? We accomplished way more than what we ever expected to do with this building because of Sean's leadership and the trade people that worked for him, and the discounts and the concessions they gave to us. We never knew we could insulate this building. We never knew we could have a beautiful vaulted ceiling. We never knew we could have windows and doors facing River Road. Sean made that happen. And it wasn't just these vendors, because I would be overlooking Darrell Wright and Wright Electric if I didn't pay tribute to them as well. They actually engaged in an in-kind gift well before I got involved with this project. And what strikes me looking back about their gift is it was done in an old-fashioned way. It was a handshake. It was a handshake for an in-kind gift of a certain amount. And let me tell you that Wright Electric, over a 3-year period, delivered to us over and over and over again, and to this day continues to do us favors. I call all of this out because Judy, in our planning, was so supportive of doing as much of this business locally as we could. She knew it was an important symbol of what we were trying to accomplish with this site into the future. And our vendors embraced it. In October of last year, on a Monday or Tuesday, I got a call from Judy. It was a different call than the typical one that I would receive. She simply said to me on that day, Doug, I want this agreement finalized by Sunday. I understood her tone. I could hear that her energy wasn't the same as what I was accustomed to. It frankly reminded me of my own father, who, at the end of a battle with an illness that he lost, loaded a car once and drove 4 hours to go to Nebraska to see the project he was working on. It was a personal connection that I will never forget. I didn't want to disappoint Judy, and we worked tirelessly that week to get our agreement complete. On the afternoon of October 25th, we met at her house and we formally signed the agreement. It was with a bittersweet emotion. We had worked very hard together for several months by that point. We had often talked that we hoped Judy would see the end result of our hard work. It was bittersweet to see that her energy was fading. What was so inspiring, though, was that her resolve was as strong as the day we met in July. Her resolve to make this a proud centerpiece of our town was unwavering. It hadn't changed at all. The illness didn't take that from her. As I round out my remarks today, I am certainly saddened that Judy wasn't able to be with us today or in the recent year to see what she helped create. But I am confident that she would look down and be proud, that she would do it with a smile, and that she would join me in saying one last time, thank you to the Washington community for your support. Thank you to my family for enduring the process and all the effort that I put into it. And thank you to the board for your support. And thank you to Judy's family. Thank you, Richard, for making sure that Judy was always able to get together for a meeting, be it at Hidden Valley or at your house. And thank you to her brother, Leon, for your support of Judy's efforts in the background. I assure you that she spoke glowingly of the input you gave along the way. With that, I say thank you one more time. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to Richard Schlossberg, Judy's husband, who will share some of his fine memories of his wonderful wife. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug. Good afternoon. I'm Richard Schlossberg, husband of Judy Black. We were a team of mostly two for 35 years. Distinguish between the preceding and continuing park, as Doug did, and the gardens. As Doug mentioned, the park was ongoing and its development ongoing and continues. Many contributors from the town. And Judy's role was, as Doug mentioned, in developing the gardens. I've been asked to explain Judy, as she preferred rather than Judith, to those who didn't know her. As while Judy lived in Connecticut, part of full-time since about 1956, and in Litchfield County since about 1983, we have resided here in Washington seasonally and in weekends in all weather for only 11 years. She wanted to contribute to the wonderful spirit she found here, and she found that spirit to be beautiful, generous, and embracing. I'd like to just discuss Judy first briefly, and then discuss the spirit of the town that she found inspiring, and then pick up with some details about Judy's life. Judy was a very, very thoughtful person. She was most thankful of her characteristic as a listener, a patient, caring listener of friends, and thus offering valued, deep, understanding, thoughtful, caring advice to her dear friends. Many of those friends are here. They are, most recently, Carrie Setlow, long-term friends, Elisa, neighbors, Ray and Carol Tidcom, Lisa Feynman, Ella Newman, and Harriet Shapiro. They were all very, very dear to Judy. A number of others, I'm sure I'm going to leave people out, so you'll pardon me for the omissions. She followed her interest in early childhood development and got a Bachelor of Arts from Bank Street School of Education and taught in Westport, Connecticut, taught 4 and 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds in King's Highway School there for a number of years. And then she changed her focus and followed her father, Eli's lead in the cause of business and earned an MBA from Columbia in marketing. She had success in a business career in introducing new media, marketing new media. What was new media at the time in the 80s and early 90s were cable TV and the internet when they were new and not so obviously profitable. She traveled around the world explaining how they could be profitable. Seems she was very successful at that. And she also traveled for curiosity and beauty. I'm going to switch now for a moment to the inspiration that we found here in Washington. That inspiration that she mentions in her plaque there, her sense of mission for the sense of the gardens here. And the gardens, there's a lot more here than meets the eye. With the help of Richard Rosiello, these are 4-season gardens, and those of you who are gardeners know that in the off-season there are things plants that look innocuous, may look like weeds, or not even show as they may be sprouts, and then they're there and they're the beauty and abundance of the later seasons. So much of that is here and should be enjoyed in the other seasons. So what inspiration did Judy find for her generosity in the town of Washington? Well, certainly the name of Washington, the town used to be called, residents here know, Judea, and was renamed for our greatest American, George Washington, who slept in a house down over the hill. And then on our street, off of Baldwin Hill Road, there's Falloys Road. Falloys is named after Benjamin Falloys, who was the founder of the Air Force here. There's Gunn Memorial Library up this hill, and the gunnery. There's Ryan Memorial Hall here in front of us, magnificent. There's, when we hike in Hidden Valley, part of the Steep Rock Preserve System, we cross the Chippewa, and we see the memorials to Stephen Reich, who gave his life for our country in military service. We're constantly surrounded by a sense of giving, of great service, and generosity, and ultimate generosity. Just driving around town, that's a part of being here. We're also moved by friends and neighbors currently on our hill, just off of Falloys. Our friends, Murray and Susan Haber, have donated a nice parcel of land to the Steep Rock Preserve, one of the most recent donations to Steep Rock. Many here in Washington donate to Steep Rock Preserve. It's our own nature preserve. Many of us work and volunteer at Steep Rock. The Judea Garden is now affiliated with Steep Rock Preserve, and Denise Arturi and her professionalism and volunteerism has been moving and inspirational, as so many of our neighbors here in town have been. We can't help but be inspired by you and your actions. One of the most inspirational and embracing joys that Judy found in town here was that of the pastors, the religious pastors here, up on the hill here, the Congregational Church, Reverend Cheryl Landiston, and the Episcopal Church, Reverend Susan Nicone, and we've had many interfaith activities that have been loving and inspiring and embracing, and Judy was for our local Greater Washington Coalition for Jewish Life. She was the religious head on the board of directors there, and she was the person from that organization working with those of the faiths in town, as well as Wisdom House and Sisters Joanne and Rosemary. So she found that just wonderful and why she wanted to stay in this town, and she is currently up the hill residing forever. There are many other examples of inspiration. I'll just mention one of many. Down the hill when Judy was sick in her waning months last autumn, her doctor, Dr. Alphonse Altarelli, and her nurse in his office, Dr. Altarelli's wife, Deborah Stracker, were the height of professionalism and caring. They helped Judy go on and be able to do what she did here in her last 4 months or so of her life, as Doug mentioned, continuing to work on this as one of her legacy projects. Now I'll pick up with Judy and what she has been doing and what in her activities. So you understand her motivation for being involved in the park, to be at least as generous, similarly so, as our neighbors are. Judy had inspiration internally from her mother. Her mother, Shirley Black Cash, was a watercolorist, an artist in Westport, who loved nature, who studied nature, has nature collections of all sorts. I'm the custodian of those, and painted and photographed. And Judy felt that that artistic talent skipped a generation, but I'll beg to differ in her artistry in landscape design. Judy was a serious person, not every minute, and she took flowers seriously. I'm sure those of you in the garden club understand that. But she did not take flowers as, like many of those of us who believe the arts in school are not something that's optional. She did not believe flowers were optional. She believed they were an integral part of existence. In another community that we're involved in, for the other season of the year in Florida, she was the neighborhood association president for 4 years, and then the unofficial president for another 3 years. And she also ran the main activity, the picnic. And one of the changes she instituted was flowers on all the picnic tables. Always. Not an option. Everybody loved it. You know, some neighbors here who have seen it. There are neighbors here, one town over, and immediate neighbors in Florida. Ray and Carol Titcomb, right? Okay. So, Judy was involved in many projects with gardens but also not just gardens with habitat. She and I were involved in many efforts to save native habitat, mostly in Florida, and she has also been involved with other legacy projects. Besides this, our most visible legacy project is the gardens here. But there are about 3 other major projects. 2 are habitat preservation projects, one in Florida and another butterfly garden in Florida with the Nature Conservancy. And 2 towns over in Bridgewater, there's another habitat project. Some of you may be familiar, maybe hike the area, the Weewaka Brook Preserve. And I'm just going to hold up something. As Judy was an early childhood teacher, she always said I should bring show and tell. So this is a little plaque she received from her contributions to what's called intermediate habitat. It's a little bit difficult to explain. It's not grasslands, it's not prairie, it's not forest. It's sort of transitional or intermediate habitat. And the New England cottontail. We'll see if it works. There's also a woodcock here, and there's a little picture of Weewaka Brook Preserve there. So that's off of Keeler in Roxbury, off of I guess Roxbury going into Bridgewater. Bridgewater. Of course, working here on in the gardens, just to give you a sense of the scale of things, the details. Of course, all this, every little circle representing a tree or shrub was discussed ad infinitum between Judy and Richard Rosiello. So, and another artifact to identify what type of person Judy was, besides thoughtful, caring, and taking plants, flowers seriously, and landscape beauty seriously. This is one of her many tape measures. She kept tape measures in her desk and besides the bed. If she would have a project, she had loads of projects always going on, and there was something she had to measure, couldn't wait. Okay, so I'll just wind up there. So she was a recent resident of the town. She grew to love it very quickly. She thanks you all for your loving embrace. Thank you.
Richard, thank you for
who enabled her dreams.
Richard, thank you for sharing so much about Judy. I think it's such an important part of what we're trying to accomplish today, so that those that did not know Judy better understand her love for our community. And I was so struck by the way that you introduced her humility and her acknowledgement of the special community that we are surrounded by. Her perspective and your perspective is very revealing, and I think it's a very special part of the person that Judy was. At this point, it is my pleasure to hand the microphone to Congresswoman Elizabeth Esty of the 5th District of Connecticut. I should add that Congresswoman Esty did a fabulous job. Actually, before I think I was involved, of helping us, the Washington Park Foundation, establish our nonprofit status. I recall Denise Trevinin telling me that we did that pretty quickly. So on behalf of the board, both current and those before me, thank you. And with that, I look forward to hearing your remarks.
Good afternoon. It is a pleasure, a true pleasure, to be with you here today. And to Judy's family, to Richard. I love the story of the tape measure because I'm a tape measure person. My father and grandfather were civil engineers, and you got to measure. And my grandmother was a great gardener. And so I did notice I had a few minutes to walk around beforehand and really could see the intentionality of a full season garden, which is really hard to do in New England, a lot easier to do in Florida. So I can imagine the vigorous discussions that must have gone on over each and every plant and what would it look like in November and what would it look like in March. And so again, thank you for sharing her with us. It's an honor to be here for the dedication of this Judy Black Memorial Park and Gardens. And it's really a day of celebration, of vision, of joy, of the environment, and of nature. And we've heard about that already from so many people here. You should know this is a very special community. I have the honor of representing 41 cities and towns. I do not know of a community that pulls together as quickly, as intensely, and effectively as Washington does. We really need to clone you for the other Washington. Just bottle up even a small amount would go a long way with what we're dealing with. So I am thrilled to represent this Washington in that Washington. So to the board, many of you I think I met for the first time, Carolyn, I think at Steep Rock, another treasure of this community, and actually Palobolis, which I remember as a young, not very good dancer in the small community of Winona, Minnesota in high school, idolizing and just being in awe of the beauty and the audacity of what they were doing in the 1970s. It was very racy for me in my little farming community. So all of these things coming together in a vision. Every community has an old, abandoned, one or two or more gas stations. They're eyesores. They're in the middle of town. They're aggravating. You drive by and think, somebody should do something. Somebody should do something. But this community, you, Judy, all of you who were involved, didn't just think about doing that. You did. You rolled up your sleeves and you did something and created this beautiful space that will endure. And I have to say, I loved seeing, I don't know if you had a chance to see the children just before we got started, enjoying the currents. You know, we talk about riding the waves. The children of this community are already riding the waves of the sculpture, swimming across, hopscotching across, and to have created this space that isn't pristine in a don't touch kind of way, but is in the most intimate, embracing, loving, supportive way, which speaks volumes about the warmth and heart and commitment and the best of New England neighborliness, of looking out for each other, embracing each other, making a special community and making it available to all. So it's public. It's in the center of town. It is open to children. And yes, touch. Not the plants maybe, but this, yes, you can touch parts of it and you can run around and there's open space to run around. The beautiful building transformed I remember Peter Talbot showing me in 2013 the mock-ups and the drawings and saying it's gonna be awesome. And I'm thinking, these projects take so long. Love your enthusiasm. But here we are. Here we are 3 short years later with a fully realized vision that is beautiful and is more than what I think anyone, even Judy, might not have conceived of how beautiful this would be. in serving so many different purposes and so many different needs. So I just want to say thank you. Congratulations and thank you to Judy's family, to the foundation, to the architects, landscape and otherwise, to the board members, to Carrie, to all of you for showing what is possible, for having a vision, for coming together, for the generosity of checkbook and spirit of work and vision, the best of America. And we need that now more than ever. We need that resolve, that vision, that optimism, and that commitment, and the realization that we can enjoy here today. So to all of you, thank you so very much for this treasure. And one last point, because I see this all the time. You have committed and resolved and funded to maintain this park. I cannot tell you how important that is. We have 100 state parks in this state, and we don't have the funding in our state to maintain them all. So the vision and the commitment, not everybody wants to pay for maintaining something. Everyone wants to put it up, but then communities have to maintain it. And for you to have made that commitment and secured this vision, not just for today and tomorrow, but on into the future. And that you are to be commended for in ways that future generations will thank you. Will thank you not just for the initial beauty and vision, but for that commitment and that resolve to make sure that it would endure. So again, hats off to all of you. We should have issued sunscreen for everyone, but what a lovely day, one that is indicative of Judy smiling down on this endeavor. So again, congratulations to all of you, and thank you so very much.
Well, I feel pretty good after hearing that description. I think the Congresswoman said so many things in such an incredible way that, frankly, everybody here, everybody that has supported us should just feel good about it. I couldn't say it any better than Congresswoman Esty just did, so thank you. Our final speaker today will be a dear friend of Judy's, Carolyn Setlow, who I think many here today do know. To me, Carolyn in many ways is perhaps the unsung hero. Remember, I told you she sent an email to me on July 6th of 2015. She made an introduction. Without that email, without her persistence and her follow-up and her ability to connect Judy and me, none of this might have ever happened. And I think sometimes we all underappreciate just what a factor in this success Carolyn was. So it's my pleasure to call Carrie to the stage and to hand her the microphone.
I'm so excited to be looking out at this park filled with people I know and love who are so important in my life and so important in the life of this community. I want to thank you all for joining us here today. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, of course, Elizabeth, for being with us. We know how busy your schedule is these couple of months prior to the election. So we're honored that you made time to join us. I want to mention to you, too, that we had invited both of our U.S. senators here and received lovely notes from both Senator Richard Blumenthal and Senator Christopher Murphy, both of whom had conflicts today. I'm going to take a few minutes, though, if I may, to read to you Chris Murphy's letter, because I think he, too, has so captured what this park means to our community. Dear friends, I wish I could join you today as you gather to celebrate the dedication of the Judy Black Memorial Park and Gardens. I know years of hard work went into transforming this former Texaco station into the park we are honoring today. Connecticut is fortunate to have generous advocates and local leaders like the Washington Park Foundation to help beautify our towns and bring livable, playable recreation spaces into the lives of children and families. This day simply would not be possible without the vision of the Washington Park Foundation and the donors who helped them make their dream a reality. Thanks to the memory and kindness of people like Judy Black, this park's leadership gift donor, generations of Washington residents will have a safe place to further their health, happiness, and well-being. The legacy of the Judy Black Memorial Park and Gardens will be found in the potential of those who use it, and we do intend to use it. Individuals will be able to foster community with their neighbors in a place that encourages creativity, activity, and a love of nature. The compassion and thoughtfulness of everyone involved in today's celebration will be remembered for years to come, and as will Judy's impact on the Washington community. And we will be remembered for years to come because we have the Gunn Historical Museum here today actually videotaping our celebration. So we'll be part of the archives. He closed by saying, community advocates like the Washington Park Foundation help Connecticut to capitalize on and improve upon our local assets. The leadership of your board, donors, and volunteers brings tremendous pride to the state of Connecticut. Thank you for bringing such passion to this project, and I look forward to enjoying the beauty of this park for years to come. Sincerely, Christopher S. Murphy, United States Senator. So as I think Richard alluded to in his remarks, and thank you, Richard, Judy and I became friends actually only during the last few years of her life. We met as she was an active member of the Greater Washington Coalition for Jewish Life. And one day I got a call out of the blue and she recruited me to work with her on one of her passions, which was organizing interfaith events throughout our community. And we did it together joyously. We did it with clergy from all of the local churches, temples. We even had two events, many of you might have been there, where we had imams coming from Connecticut mosques to help us all understand each other better. So while Judy had a great love of the values and the rituals of Judaism, she also had a profound love of community and a belief in the power of interfaith communities to address common concerns and problems. Judy and I felt an immediate connection. It's funny, I used to say to her, Judy, I feel like we're speed dating. We would make a date every week. We'd have lunch together, and particularly during the last 6 months of her life where I knew that the company was so important to her and I wanted to be with her as much as I could. And yet, we went through this speed dating, I think, with an uncanny sense that our time together might be limited. Judy, and there's no way to capture her in so few words, but she was bright, she was engaged, she was funny, she was warm, and she was totally without pretense. When Judy was diagnosed with cancer, she was certainly optimistically hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. One day in July 2015, which is really only, when you think about it, 14 months ago, we were having lunch together at the Hidden Valley Eatery, as Doug mentioned. Judy shared with me her desire to make a gift of lasting beauty to the community of Washington, and it was a gift that she wanted the entire town to be able to enjoy. She looked at me. Did I have any ideas? She wondered. So I asked her, I said, are you aware of what's going on this lot in the middle of town, in the center of the depot? And she was not. I told her, of course, about the purchase of the property by a group of very generous donors. I told her about a capital campaign that had been started to beautify and refurbish the property. I promised, of course, to put her in touch with Doug Day, president of the Washington Park Foundation. And then I contacted Doug, as he told you, to make the introduction. And as they say in this cliche, the rest is history. I've never known someone quite as determined and focused as Judy Black, even when she was coping with her illness. She was a dreamer, yes she was, but she was also a pragmatist. In the final months of her life, as you've heard, with of course the invaluable support of breeze, which is so delightful. I think it's Judy here with us in the trees. I feel her. Anyway, in the final months of her life, with the invaluable support of her loving brother, Leon Black, who's here today with Deborah, and of course her loving husband, Richard, Judy hammered out, and I think it's fair to say hammered out, with Doug, the details of an agreement that spelled out her vision for the parks and gardens. She signed that on October 25th, exactly 11 months ago today. Judy, in that agreement, asked, as she well should have, for a seat on the board. So she wanted to be sure this would all happen as she anticipated. And then, and I was terribly honored, she asked me if I would serve as her successor trustee on the board of the Washington Park Foundation, should she no longer be able to serve. I agreed, but I hoped that she would continue to fill her seat on the board for a very long time. Sadly, that didn't happen. Judy died the following month, just before work on the park and gardens began. You probably now know this, that Judy personally selected, every tree, the trees behind me. She left intact the beautiful trees that had been here for so long. But she selected every tree, every plant, every stone, right down to the very color. Everything. She did this, of course, in collaboration with Richard Rosilio of Meadowbrook. On one of the last days of her life, Richard told me this. She and Richard Richard Schlossberg, made her final trip to the White Flower Farm in Litchfield. From her wheelchair, am I right, Richard? She selected the daffodil bulbs, whose flowers we will all enjoy every spring. Daffodils were among her favorite flowers. As part of her agreement, Judy left behind a legacy statement, which is abbreviated on the bronze plaque that I hope you'll all go to see on this beautiful stone wall on the right. I'm going to read to you her legacy statement. My dream is to create and share a beautiful, artful garden, now and for years to come, for all to enjoy. Trees, shrubs, flowers, variations in color, textures, seasonality, where all can step out of worry and stress, can come to relax, to dream, to be inspired and experience the continually unfolding wonders of nature. She continued, my dream is to ensure the realization and maintenance of the park. The maintenance, which Congresswoman Estee reminds us, is hard to come by. A gathering place to meet friends and neighbors and make new friends. It's a place where children can play and explore, and we're happy to have children with us today. It's a place to build relationships, attend cultural and educational programs, Some of you may have been here last Saturday night. We had over 100 people sitting on blankets and chairs on this beautiful grass as Sing Out Connecticut entertained us. A place to have holiday fairs to support local farmers, promote and further the spirit of the unique, vibrant, beautiful Washington community in which we live. I'd like to conclude my remarks today with an anonymous Greek proverb. A society grows great when old men and women plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. Thank you, my dear friend Judy. And thank you for the many other generous men and women for planting trees whose shade our children and grandchildren will enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to bring an end to our dedication ceremony today. I can't say enough one more time. Thank you for your support. Thank you for turning out. You can see that the crowd has surpassed our expectations. We didn't have enough seating, but it's a wonderful day. Judy touched my life. It was an incredible journey. And I hope that today, by getting to hear some of our speakers, you got to have a little bit of that feel for why she was so inspirational. In closing, my one single ask is come use our park. The door is open. We want to see you here. We want to see you here looking at our flowers, having lunch, having coffee, enjoying each other's company. That has always been our mission. That was Judy's vision.